Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The topic of my presentation today is entitled The 1991 Indian Economic Crisis. I will start my presentation by telling a little bit of background of what happened in India during the 1990s. In 1990s, India was facing a serious economic problem as the country is experiencing twin deficit, a huge fiscal deficit and a trade balance deficit at the same time. By the end of 1990s, the country's foreign exchange reserves could have barely financed the country's 3 weeks of imports. The Indian government had came close to defaulting its financial obligation. The low reserves had led to a sharp depreciation of the rupee, which in turn has worsened the twin deficit problem that the country is facing. The main question will be, what had caused the crisis? There are a few main reasons behind the economic crisis in India. The first one is the Gulf War. The war between coalition forces led by the US against Iraq has led to the rapid increase in price of crude oil and also India buying oil from the spot market. Both of these reasons has contributed to India's fiscal and trade deficit. The second reason behind the economic crisis in India is the country's fiscal indiscipline. The Economic Survey had categorically remarked that India's gross fiscal deficit has been more than 8% of GDP since 1985. An important issue was the way in which this deficit was being financed. This brings us to the third reason, that is, rise in the country's external debt. The current account deficit faced by the country was mainly financed with costly sources of external finance, such as external commercial borrowings and NRI deposits. This has led to the rise in the country's external debt. Besides that, India's political uncertainty and instability also contributed to the economic crisis. In fact, within a span of 1.5 years, there were 3 coalition governments and 3 prime ministers in India. This led to delay in tackling the ongoing balance of payment crisis and also led to a loss of investor confidence. The economic problem in India has led to crisis in financial market. In mid-1990s, India's exchange rate was subject to a severe adjustment. The authorities at the Reserve Bank of India tried to slow down the decline in value by expanding international reserves. Nonetheless, the reserve was depleting, and the country close to defaulting on its financial obligations. The government of India had to pledge the gold reserves to secure the emergency loan from the IMF. Meanwhile, the inflation is rising in the country. National budget was behind schedule due to government unable to seek loans due to lower rating by Moody's. There was public outcry when it was learned that the government had pledged the country's entire gold reserves against the loan. The failure of the Chandrasekhar government in responding to the crisis has led to its collapse around the mid-year of 1991. P.V. Narasimha Rao took over as Prime Minister in June of the same year, and the new government has implemented fiscal correction to stabilize the economy. Structural reforms were initiated in the field of trade, industry, and the public sector. Steps in the 1991 reforms include the following: fiscal reform, monetary and financial sector reforms, reforms in capital market, industrial policy reforms, trade policy reforms, promoting foreign investment, and rationalization of exchange rate policy. In general, The liberalization of country's economy in the formal sector has more or less helped reform the economy of India and bring out the country from facing a longer economic crisis. That's all from me. Thank you.